It's on. But the radio's not. YouTube's on, but the radio's not.
Cool.
Okay, here we are. Hey, good evening and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you from the gun store here in Las Vegas. The show is about guns, political things, a lot of those tonight, and self-defense issues. You can listen to Fired Up on KSHP 1400 AM radio and on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin every Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. You can watch the YouTube version anytime, and we are putting together a podcast now, so you can listen to us shortly in the future. You can listen to us on your iPhone or whatever the thing are you plug in your ears, you people who do that, whenever you want to. Tonight's guests are a couple of people involved heavily in the firearms world. Lenny Davis to my far left over there, and Maggie Mordaunt in the middle. Lenny, if you'd give a little bit of your background for listeners, please.
Sure, Bob. My name's Lenny Davis. I'm a retired special agent with Department of Homeland Security. Been a former trainer for the U.S. State Department in anti-terrorism, and now I am the Director of Investigations for Textratics International here in Las Vegas.
And Maggie Mordaunt, or CCW Maggie.
CCW Maggie, yes. Maggie Mordaunt here, known as CCW Maggie nationally and internationally. I'm the owner of Homeland Personal Protection and the new, getting ready to launch, Las Vegas Hunt Club. We own a defense shooting company. I say we, my husband and I, brought on a few instructors, but I'm also a defense shooting instructor primarily. I'm a training counselor with the National Rifle Association. I am the Nevada State Representative for the Well-Armed Women. For the ladies, when they come to the gun store and take the women's class that I teach for the gun store, they can come out and exercise with all the different things that they learn in the class. I'm an all-around cowgirl.
Yeehaw.
Gun girl. Yeehaw. Questions or comments can be directed to Bob at firedupmail.com. I'm on one of these signs up here. If you have a question or comment directly for Maggie or Lenny, address it to the same place and I will forward it to them so we don't bury you in websites and addresses. Although you can find contact information direct for either of our guests on our website. That's www.firedupwithboberwin.com. Go to instructors or the show and you'll see them there. We had an election a couple days ago.
Really?
Lots of things happened. We were preparing this show to, actually I was preparing it as most of us were to, what are we going to do now with Hillary in charge of our gun laws and everything else. And surprise, we actually won the war, but in Nevada, we lost the battle. The Harry Reid machine worked to a T in our state, unfortunately, and we elected a whole bunch of legislators who are on the left side of everything, a whole lot of Democrats. Joe Heck lost his run for the Senate. Mastow won her race against him, and we lost a couple of Congress people that were on our side. And we got all Democrats now in the legislature. They're going to control everything for us. And that remains to be seen how tough that's going to be. We expect it to be a pretty anti-gun group. The thing that did change in Nevada, which has been on the news a lot, was question 1 was on the ballot, which ostensibly requires universal background checks, that everybody getting a gun from anybody has to go through a background check. And first off, the short version is it's not in effect. It was a referendum that said the legislature will need to make a law that requires background checks on all transfers except and now it goes to the legislature. They don't start till February. There was an article in the RJ Review Journal here locally that said it goes into effect on the 1st of January. We've had people calling constantly thinking that's in effect now. And it's not. Lenny, we were talking earlier, you had a really clear explanation of that.
Yeah, it's basically the law. The people have spoken, and they said they want the legislature to write a law saying that there has to be background checks. That doesn't mean that on January 1st of this year that you have to have a background check before you transfer the guns. The legislature doesn't meet until February, and in February they are mandated by the people to pass a law for background checks. So that law has to be passed. It has to be written, hopefully within the law boundaries of both the U.S. and Nevada Constitution, and within federal law. There is a lot of problems with this thing, folks. And you know, I'm a former federal law enforcement officer. Okay, I spent 31 years in that business. This law is not going to do. It's going to do bupkis. There's no way you're going to legislate criminals. There's a million gun laws on the books right now that aren't being enforced, and until somebody wakes up and realizes bad people are going to do bad things no matter what the law says, what you put on the book is not going to help. So
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, there's over 2,000 laws right now, and probably not even a quarter of those are even followed through with. You know, this is ridiculous. How are you going to keep up with and or be able to track this law? It's ridiculous. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything.
And we were talking earlier before we came on about straw purchases, which basically this is going to be to get rid of the straw man purchase. For those of you that don't realize what a straw man purchase is, somebody like Maggie, who's a good person, say I was a bad person and I went to Maggie and I said, hey, would you go buy that gun for me, please?
Right.
Knowing in my heart of hearts that I'm a bad guy and I'm a prohibited person. She goes in and buys it. She knows in her heart of hearts she's going to give it to me anyway. That's what it's for. It's not for anything else. That's a straw purchase. In 2014, there were over 77,000 cases of straw man purchases reported to the U.S. Department of Justice. Out of that 77,000 cases, just at 7,000 were prosecuted. So virtually less than 10% were prosecuted. This is just another, if that law is not going to be enforced, how is the state law going to be enforced?
Yeah.
It simply can't be. And I, responding to a phone call I had on the same issue, a fella called me who's a resident of Chicago, and he said that the background check thing is being, when I mentioned on the previous show that they had all these gun laws in Chicago and they still have this incredible murder rate. And he said that's because they drive over the bridge to Indiana and buy guns there and bring them back to Chicago. And for that, there were a lot of questions, not just him, but let me explain that to you. That's against the law. It's a straw sale. If you go to another state to buy a handgun, they will not make the sale. You have to be a resident of the state you live in to buy a handgun. And you can't, no dealer can make a gun sale to someone who is going to import it illegally. You could probably buy AR-15s in Indiana. You certainly can't have them in Chicago. So if someone comes into a gun shop in Indiana and wants an AR-15 and they sign their address that they live in Chicago, the dealer's not going to make the sale. It's illegal for him to take the gun into Chicago. So those things are already against the law. And yet, the gangsters obviously don't obey the law. Making another law will not make them law-abiding citizens. Murder is already against the law.
Exactly.
So we are just piling laws, but what they do is they delay honest citizens from getting guns because of the background and the time it takes and so on. This universal background check will prevent thousands of people who need to get a gun for self-defense from getting them and prevent zero crimes. One of the guys pushing this was our local district attorney, and when he was here and we discussed it, he said if it saves one life, if one person comes in and is turned down trying to buy a gun because they're prohibited, that's a good thing. As if because we turn him down, he's not going to commit the crime. So he's going to stab the person instead of shoot him, or do a straw sale, or steal a gun from somebody. This mythical criminal who's going to go, oh my God, I failed the background check, I must go be a nice person the rest of my life, does not exist. It's not going to prevent crimes. It's going to cause crimes by disarming victims.
Right.
Any more on that, or we're kind of done? It ain't the bottom line is it's not the law yet. You don't have to do a background check today, tomorrow, or on the 1st. There was an article in the Review Journal that said it goes in effect on the 1st. It does not. It has to go through the legislature. We're a long ways away. Unfortunately, with the legislature that we just put in office, there's going to be very little point in any of us who have all done it, gone to the legislature and testified on gun bills. It's cast in stone. They're going to write something that's going to hurt the gun owning public.
I think at some point you're going to see this. It's just almost, I don't know how you would write this to where it would be constitutional. So it's probably going to end up in the Nevada or maybe even the U.S. Supreme Court before it's over with, because
absolutely,
these politicians are just, they want to ram it down your throat and they don't care about that later. So
it'll be challenged immediately, and it'll be in court for a long time. The governor has already expressed that he will likely veto whatever they put forth, and that'll create the challenge right there. So it may be years before we have the universal background check or some version of it. Hopefully longer than that. It is a waste of paper.
Yes.
We're going to kill thousands of trees filling out all these forms.
My biggest concern really quickly about it was that as a firearms instructor, I have students who maybe want to borrow a gun, kind of test fire the gun, try it out, and see if they like it, kind of creating their new normal. Because as a concealed carry weapons instructor, we have people out there who are like, well, I don't know what gun I should buy. And it kind of gives you that try before you buy idea. And now it's just going to be that they can come to the range, shoot the gun. And I was really concerned also for the gun store that, you guys rent guns, and, we're allowed to have people shoot the guns on the range. And that was one of my concerns. But so long as they're in our presence and in our company, and we don't lose sight of them with our firearms, that's the way I was reading it.
There is an exception for licensed ranges. So where you teach at the Clark County Shooting Park, and we have gun rentals at the gun store here, we have an indoor range and do this sort of thing. The problem is going to be in the more rural areas where it's not a licensed shooting range, and your equivalent working in Elko wants to take her student out where they normally go in the desert to shoot, but they don't have a licensed shooting range there.
Right, or an FFL license.
You can't do it.
Right.
It's, the wording is just awful, and it's going to catch a lot of people in a trap.
It's wonky.
But it's a lot. It's not going to catch you this week. So
it's not going to catch you this year.
This year. It may be a decade.
Yeah.
We may change that on the federal level with our new president. Yay. And wow.
Well, you brought that up earlier too, Bob, the fact that what the state law is saying they want you to do is basically telling you as a dealer to violate the federal law.
Yeah, the way it's written now, we either violate federal law or violate state law.
Yeah.
And normally I choose, if I've got to make that decision, to violate the federal one because their jails are nicer than the county lockups. But, it's going to, as it's written now, it cannot be done by FFL holders. They're going to violate one law or the other, either state or federal or county, or, it's, we all already have laws that tell us what we can do. And this law, the way they wrote this referendum, voids a whole lot of laws that I don't think various agencies that enforce them are going to want them to be voided. So anyway, it's complicated. Don't worry about it. Nothing's happening now. I like to talk about defensive use of firearms on the show. That's the point of the show. We put together usually a half a dozen or so shooting cases that have happened in the last week or two to give viewers, listeners, a idea of what's happening out there and whether the shooting was a good shooting or bad shooting. So we will put a few together. When we're talking about particular shootings, I've added a little bit of a discretionary statement here. We're talking generally in cases what took place in various states around the United States. Some of them are Nevada cases, most of them aren't. And when we make a diagnosis that this was a good shoot or a bad shoot, it may not apply to the jurisdiction you live in. What is a good shooting in Nevada is rarely a good shooting in New York City, if ever. They all have different rules for things. When you get down to the specifics of an individual shooting, you need to ask a local criminal defense attorney what the rules are. Unfortunately, I used to, in early shows, I said, call the police department and ask them what the rules are. But often you'll get an answer of what the rules would be if that particular officer was in charge. So he's not. So call a defense lawyer and ask them, and they'll tell you what's going on in your county or city or state relating to particular shooting. Anyway, we'll start out here. This is from the Journal News in Hamilton, Ohio. It took place on the 2nd of this month. An 88-year-old resident had just finished washing his car in the front yard of his home on a Tuesday night when a man and a woman cornered him and demanded money. They forced him back into his house. Once inside, the victim said they hit him in the face and in the chest. He thought he was going to be severely beaten. The male robber even taunted him, "You don't have a gun, do you?" Actually, the elderly resident's gun had been stolen a month earlier, and maybe this guy saw that crime report is why he asked that question. But the guy had purchased a .38 revolver to replace it already. When the female accomplice was in the kitchen looking through his stuff, the victim was able to get his gun from a coffee table drawer. He shot the male robber as he stood in the doorway counting the money in the wallet that he'd just taken from the victim. He's concentrating on how much money he got when he got himself shot. The male robber was hit in the leg. The female accomplice yelled she was afraid now the armed citizen was going to shoot her. And the old guy said, "Get your ass out of here and I won't shoot you." And both of them fled the scene.
Get off my lawn.
Right.
The suspect had taken the man's cell phone, his home phone they pulled out of the wall, and his wallet. They had unhooked the television, but the male robber got himself shot before they were able to haul that out. So the elderly victim's cell phone was later found by the police several blocks away where the guy dumped it. The police are still investigating as an ongoing case here. This just happened. They said,
Sounds like a psychological stop.
great shooting. And having a defensive firearm quickly accessible saved this guy's life. Now, if we look at this type of case and go, you're in California, so your gun's got to be locked in a safe and all that sort of thing.
Well,
they're worthless.
This is where thank God we didn't get the president we got the president that we got, not the other one, because she wanted to make it you could have a gun, but you had to have it disassembled and locked up in your house, which makes it absolutely ridiculous. It's no longer a defensive weapon at that point. You're better off with a chainsaw or an axe or something.
Right. Take a knife class.
Yeah.
At 88 years old, I think he did actually pretty good. I mean, he had a plan. He already experienced being robbed and, knew exactly what to do, made his move, which is awesome. And I think at 88 years old, I think he just, I'm 88 years old and I've had enough.
We're going to get, I know I'll get some feedback on this. These are all published on ammoland.com as I get them out to them.
Yeah.
That I'm going to get some flack back saying, the guy only shot this guy in the leg. He should have done this. And, that's a mistake to argue that. The individual, obviously, he aimed at his leg. He said that several times to the police. He didn't feel comfortable killing somebody. It's his choice. if he didn't want to take a life, maybe at age 88, he'd seen enough of life that he didn't want to get involved with that.
Right.
So don't go after the guy. It's only his choice to make. You have somebody in a situation, they decide not to shoot somebody, leave them alone. That's their choice.
Well, you shoot to stop the threat, and he did that, whether it was physiological or psychological. In this case, it was psychological, even though the guy got a wound. So yeah.
But you just don't mess with an 88-year-old man.
That's right.
Well, yeah,
Who's
what
out-
are they
who's
going
out
to do?
washing
to him?
his car, yeah.
Put him in jail.
I think that statement that the bad guy made though was kind of funny. So you don't have a gun, do you?
Yeah.
Did he see a report, or was he the guy that burglarized the house?
Right?
That
Who knows?
that
He could have
was
been
kind
armed.
of a, if you're an investigator, that's kind of a
That's what we
clue.
call in the business a clue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he stole the guy's gun before, and
Yeah.
that's why they picked the house. St. Louis Post-Dispatch, this is on the 4th of November in Lake St. Louis, Missouri, just before 1 a.m. The resident of a townhouse on Monterey Cypress Drive called 911. He heard his car alarm go off and went outside to confront the man trying to steal his 2009 Volkswagen Passat. He advised police that shots had been fired and he needed assistance. So when officers arrived, they found the Passat about a block away where it had crashed into a home. In the driver's seat was a 31-year-old male, local guy, also from Lake St. Louis. He'd been shot and died at the scene. The officers didn't say if he was armed. The homeowner's name was not released, but he was not injured. A captain there with the police department named Chris DiGiuseppe said police are investigating how the suspect got there and whether anyone else was involved. They're working to reconstruct the incident to determine if the shooting was justified. Now, here you got a little bit of a dicey case. The investigation will discover if the guy in the car, the thief, was actually armed, or perhaps he had an accomplice who was driving the car. If it turns out that he was actually unarmed and alone, this could become a very tough case for the shooter. Missouri's pretty good on defensive shootings, but follow what happened here. He went out when his car alarm went off. The guy is trying to drive away in his car, and he fired, and the guy died. We're missing something here, which is the threat to his life. This could end up in a criminal case. It could have, certainly will end up in a wrongful death lawsuit if the dead guy had any relatives at all. And I'm assuming at the moment, because it appears the guy was alone. If there was a second guy, if the bad guy actually had a gun, that may change the whole outlook here. But from what we can see, the response wasn't reasonable. What will happen in reality of the real world when the family members come and sue and say, well, even the police might look at this and say, you went out, the guy is running away, and you shot him, and he died. We're going to have to charge you, as much as we probably don't want to, is a dead guy who wasn't a threat.
Well, and tactically on this thing too, I mean, you're in the house, you hear your car alarm go off. You do not. He was doing really well calling 911 until he goes out to look and see what's going on. These guys don't always work alone, and even in this case, there may very well have been the fact that there's another accomplice to this thing.
Yeah, the sequence was, again, he went out when he heard the alarm. Then after he fired, he went back in the house and called 911. So
so he's even worse.
Way off in the sequence here.
Yeah, that's where you make sure that you are being a good witness, call 911, and I'm sure he would know his own license plate number. Hello, this is my car. This is my license plate number. There's someone who stole it. Let the police handle it. Let the authorities
handle it. Here's my cell
phone.
I clicked
Here's
on
my
and
cell
there's
phone.
a video.
Yeah,
of the
we all
guy.
have the cell phones to take pictures and things. I mean, let the authorities handle it. Just because you own a firearm doesn't turn you into a police officer. Unless your life is being threatened.
This could turn into a real problem for this guy. even if it's correct, the shooting's fine, it turned out the guy had a gun,
Mhm.
or there was an accomplice, there's
Yeah.
still going to be years of litigation over it.
Yeah.
The amount of money
Civil
he's going to
suit.
spend on attorneys and experts defending himself is not worth a 2009 Volkswagen Passat, even if it's a really good 6-year-old car, you know? Look at what you're doing and the risk you're taking to everything you own. The value of that car is going to be eaten up in the first attorney that has to look
Oh,
at this case.
absolutely.
Most definitely.
Don't do that. If you don't have to engage, let the police do it. They love that kind of stuff.
Right. Tool of
That's
last
why they
resort.
became cops, was to chase this guy down and whoop him,
Exactly.
you know?
That's what they signed up for.
The gun store offers free concealed carry permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find them on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Please do, wherever you are listening to the show, get some training so you don't become this guy we were just talking about. Oh, this is so good. WLWT TV5 and Fox TV 19 in Middleton, Ohio on the 3rd of this month. This was Monday night at midnight, 3100 block of Yale Avenue. The homeowner, who's a lady in her 70s, they didn't detail 70 what, so we just got to go with 70s. The police said she was in bed when she heard a noise in her kitchen. She went downstairs to check on the noise, only to find an arm reaching through the window. There's a small kitchen window, apparently, and the guy had taken the screen off, and he's trying to get in the house. Well, she saw the guy's arm reaching through, so she said she just started scratching, digging in his skin, pushing on him, pulling on him, trying to knock the crap out of him with her fists. That's her words. The hapless burglar was apparently stuck in the window. He got in far enough, couldn't get back out. Then the woman ran to grab her gun and called 911. She returns to the window. The elderly woman begins to beat the intruder with the butt of her gun. She told reporters, "I don't ever want to kill a person, but if I have to, I will." The burglar eventually got free and ran from the home. Officials say the man dropped his hat during the break-in. They're using that to get DNA evidence and find the guy. Canine units were called to the area, but they lost him near Titus Avenue. Apparently, there's an apartment complex that he lives in there, but the dogs couldn't tell where he lived. They didn't find him anyway, searching it. No arrests have been made. The lady told the media that showed up, "I don't believe any woman or young girl that's being attacked should run because she's going to get killed anyways. I believe she should fight back." Great. Sounds like one of your students here, Maggie.
Well, I mean, we've got some ladies that are, tough as nails, but I always recommend to evade if possible. If you don't have the ability to get away, then definitely fight. But I'm a big fan of evade, barricade, arm yourself with whatever weapon it is that you choose to use. Call 911 immediately and respond with necessary force. In this case, this lady, she was tough stuff, and she got lucky that she was able to kick this guy's butt, because the tables could have been turned. He could have had a weapon, and he could have sliced and diced her. He could have shot her. Could have done any of those things, but she got pretty lucky.
I just admired her
Her tenacity.
her tenacity. I'm just looking at this woman's attitude, and if this guy had been able to get through the window, he'd have run into a hail of lead.
Yeah,
I mean,
he would no longer be among the fugitives. I think he's going to be. He really doesn't want to get arrested for this, because if he goes down and he's telling his friends on the yard in the prison that he was beat up by a 77-year-old woman because he was stuck in the window, because he will be the fresh catch at the wussy prison. I'm telling you.
That's called being bitch slapped.
It needs a better story. I can't imagine what's going through this guy's mind when he realizes he's stuck and she's beating on him with the butt of her gun.
Nice.
Again, she chose not to shoot him. Fine.
Yeah.
Her call. It's just.
Again, a senior citizen kicked some butt.
That's right. I think senior citizens have had it.
Well, I got a lot of them in that. This is like
on.
Senior Citizen Week in the airliner.
Senior citizens.
The gun store here, we offer machine gun shooting events for corporate groups, bachelor parties, weddings, and group events. If you contact Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com, for reservations. She'll get you set up with the costs and times and whatever all we can do, and have a good time. This story is, it just needed to be in. It's a citizen with a gun helping somebody else. This is the News Tribune in Tacoma and KIRO TV7. This was reported on the 1st. A man hit a 7-year-old boy who was out trick-or-treating with his car in Tacoma's North Slope neighborhood. He was charged Tuesday in the Pierce County court with vehicular assault. The 30-year-old suspect was arrested Halloween night after neighbors kept him from fleeing the scene, where he hit a boy who was out trick-or-treating at North 9th and North I Streets. The boy was crossing the street holding his father's hand when he was hit. The father was brushed by the car, but he wasn't injured. The boy was taken to Marybridge Children's Hospital in critical condition, fractured skull, missing teeth, bruised from head to toe. He was still in critical condition as I was writing this yesterday. The driver told officers he got off work, had been drinking before headed home. He also admitted to smoking marijuana. Question 2 here. He explained to officers he was going home when the child ran out in front of his car. The witnesses there, a bunch of them, gave a different account. A woman who was driving north on I Street said she stopped her car at the intersection to let a group of people cross. Then she saw the car hit the child. The car continued a bit before stopping. She jumped out in front of the car to keep it from leaving the scene. And actually, I didn't put it in here, but he bumped her a few times with his bumper to try and get her out of the way, and she wouldn't move. Another neighbor used his firearm to stop the driver from running away. The guy started to get out of the car. This neighbor ran over, pointed his gun, and basically put the guy under citizen's arrest.
Yes.
Fine job. An
Very
armed
good.
citizen is able to keep this dirtbag who just maybe, I mean, he's crippled this kid for life, very likely. And he's 7 years old. Out trick-or-treating, this guy runs over him and tries to leave the scene, and an armed citizen is able to make a citizen's arrest and stop him. And obviously you're allowed to do that. You can make a citizen's arrest in virtually every jurisdiction. Always when I talk to people about intervening in other people's problems, you need to mention that you saw what was going on and you're sure who's who. You know, that you get the good guy and the bad guy mixed up and you could end up in a world of hurt. But in this case, obviously, you know, a 7-year-old getting run over and the guy trying to leave the scene, it's pretty obvious who the bad guy is. Hard to misread that. The interesting scenario, and this guy surrendered, fortunately for him.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have done if the bad guy jumped out of the car and ran?
Well, I know I wouldn't have pursued him. I mean, you have his car, you have his fingerprints, you have his DNA. It's probably his car. You know, you're going to be a good witness. The guy's really no longer a threat because
you sure want to shoot him though.
Oh, you want to shoot him bad, but you can't. You can't. As much as you'd love to just go bye-bye.
Yeah,
you
that's
can't.
for sure. You can't shoot him.
Be a
Otherwise
good
he'd
witness.
become be a good witness. But they could actually detain him. They could have actually
And that was legal.
used less than lethal force. Instead of using deadly force, less than lethal force could be used. I mean, there was obviously lots of people around. I mean, my goodness, the father of the 7-year-old, I'm surprised he didn't pummel him. I'm sure he was more worried about his son. But, you know, sometimes you get that fight or flight and you just react. And, you know, this guy is lucky that the people that witnessed it didn't pummel him.
This was good. The guy steps in, stops a
That's right. Felony in progress.
scumbag from driving away from the scene. And not a bright scumbag, as he explained to police. He'd had a few drinks and smoked a little marijuana driving home. And that should finish him off for a number of years in the state. And,
Well, it is the People's Republic of Washington, so
yeah, but
you know, it's almost as liberal as the People's Republic of California.
oh, here we go with Bob's warning shot case that I always throw in. I am the instructor left, the only one left in the world that doesn't believe in never using warning shots. But Here we go. This is WKRN News 2, Nashville, Tennessee, back on 10/27. Metro Police tracked down and arrested 4 suspects after an unarmed woman was robbed outside her Bellevue apartment on Wednesday night. The robbery occurred at the Lexington Apartments on Old Hickory Boulevard at 10:30 p.m. Metro Police told News 2 the victim was robbed as she was returning to her apartment. Several suspects approached the victim in an apparent robbery attempt. An alert neighbor witnessed the robbery and fired some warning shots. The would-be robbers then ran for their car and fled. Given the detailed description, officers were able to track the vehicle to Glen Rose Avenue South in South Nashville, where they reportedly jumped out of the vehicle and took off running. 2 of the suspects were quickly taken into custody. A canine officer named Rio caught the 3rd suspect, who was a female, a short time later. While police were investigating, if the 4th suspect arrived at the scene to ask police if he could have his girlfriend's car back. That was the getaway car involved in the robbery.
That was the mastermind of the entire outfit. Yeah.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah.
He was arrested by the Ever Alert police. Like, this your girlfriend's car,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah. Sheesh.
Since she's going to jail, can I have her car?
That's right. Yeah, you've got one. You don't need 2.
The point is of this is,
Sheesh.
it appears the authorities are going to let this helpful individual who fired the warning shots slide. Obviously, a crime of some sort was in progress. No one was hit by the guy's gunfire, and it did break up the crime. As I started this out, most instructors will tell you never ever fire a warning shot. Once in a while, they take issue with it, and in this case, is one of those. If you know where the bullet's going, you've got a backstop that's safe, and it's clearly safe. Sometimes they make enough noise that they will prevent maybe this woman getting beaten or so forth. I mean, we won't know because it didn't happen. They ran away when the shots were fired.
Right.
Which is the point. But again, only when you know where the bullet's going, because anything you hit, you bought.
Police stopped doing warning shots
I know.
decades ago.
The 2 individuals to my left will tell you never fire a warning shot.
Never.
I will.
What goes up will come
Must
down.
come down. And every bullet has an attorney attached to it. Just saying.
Anyway,
so there we are.
There's no attorneys here today.
I think
A reminder, we teach the concealed carry permit class for Nevada every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and we teach in the class never fire a warning shot.
Never.
Because I'm not personally teaching them now. I have instructors who agree with the 2 people to my left.
That's right. You have an amazing instructor.
You can go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and get information on our class, which is basically free. We do about 65% of the concealed weapon permit applications in the county, according to Metro PD, which is good.
Yes.
I gotta come back and see you next year. Renew.
WTVD TV 11 in Garner, North Carolina on the 6th of this month. Garner police said a neighbor interrupted an altercation between a man and a woman early Sunday morning in the 1800 block of Spring Drive just before 7 a.m. Officers said the 32-year-old male and 26-year-old female were in a relationship, had an altercation inside the apartment that kind of spilled outside into the parking lot. Nearby 26-year-old male resident heard screaming and yelling from the apparent assault. He went outside to check out what was going on. He saw the male assaulting the female, fired several rounds from his personal handgun, hitting the attacker. The wounded attacker ran back into the couple's apartment, where police later found him. Another neighbor heard screaming and said, it was from the same person, so I thought it was only one person. It was pretty closely followed by 3 what sounded like pops, but I guess they were gunshots. Both the attacker and his victim were taken to the hospital, the male who was attacking and the woman. The male attacker was pronounced dead, while his victim had surgery for her multiple stab wounds and in stable condition at the ICU. I thought I would leave that line till the end so you understand why the
Yeah.
guy fired. This woman was being stabbed
Stabbed.
multiple times.
Yes.
No
Deadly
charges
force.
are being filed against the intervening gun owner, and he is not taken into custody. Great example of another citizen jumping in to save a victim, what likely would have been a murder.
Mm-hmm.
You keep your firearm to protect yourself, and I've had people tell me that have CCWs, I don't carry it usually because I'm not going someplace dangerous. It may be somebody else needs your firearm. In this case, he saved this woman's life because he had his gun. Obviously, when this is in the middle, we always say, try and warn them, this and that, call the police first. He sees somebody this guy stabbing this woman. We're done with the call 911 and wait. Ain't gonna happen.
De-escalation is probably out the window.
Yeah, the neighbor's a hero in every sense of the word for intervening and doing that. Good for him.
Right, good for him. He
So-
saved her life. She could have died. Bad guy is no longer here, which is awesome. And crime happens everywhere, and so be prepared anywhere you go. I carry everywhere I go,
I carry a gun because
wherever it's legal.
I carry a gun because a policeman is just too heavy to carry.
Here we go. Yeah, I knew that was.
Sorry.
Well, I have a crossbody purse, and so I carry it everywhere. Jump on. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you have a permit, or you're allowed to carry a gun
Mm-hmm.
for whatever other reason. In Nevada, you can carry one in your car most places, except the airport parking lot, that kind of thing. But, carry it. You never know when you're going to be the one that's there when somebody's in the middle of being stabbed to death.
Right.
And at least you have the threat to point the gun and ask the guy politely to quit stabbing the person. And if they run
Right.
away, let them run away. But your gun may save somebody else's life. So have it. Have
Exactly.
access to
I
it.
mean, it's an amazing thing.
WWL-TV4 in Narlands, Louisiana on the 29th. I threw this in because this is a stupid one and maybe I have a solution at the end. Police arrested a man Friday evening after he allegedly shot his stepson in the foot while firing warning shots into the floor during an argument. Brain surgeon here. According to the preliminary report from the New Orleans Police Department, the man was arguing with his stepson, armed himself with a handgun, and started firing shots into the floor. Apparently, that was to put emphasis on some point in the argument. Police say one of those shots struck his stepson in the foot. Officers arrested the stepfather at the scene, 6800 block of Dorian Street, and his stepson was taken to the hospital by EMS. Couple of comments here, and then we'll throw this over. The California theory of requiring safety training to anybody who owns a gun would obviously apply to this idiot. The problem is those requirements obviously violate the Constitution. We can't, it'd be nice to say you should get training, and we all believe you should get training. But if you make it a rule, you have to take this government-approved program before you're allowed to have a gun. That is against the Constitution.
Yes.
Idiots like this cause those laws and restrict the 99% of us who are more normal, rational citizens. But I have a solution. The solution is to put fools like this guy in jail so the word gets out not to bring a gun to a verbal confrontation. When I was a cop, we often used the term felony stupid. You run into situations all the time that aren't really a crime. It's just felony stupidity. I couldn't tell you the number. We've all used that. But how about a felony stupid was an actual crime? We put the guy in jail. If we put this guy in jail for 6 months, maybe the word will get out not to fire your gun into the floor as part of an argument.
Right.
It doesn't violate anybody's constitutional rights. It's only this guy. You can vote. When you see this appear on Emmaland, you can write comments. And what do you think? Maybe we should have a law that says you can go to jail for being felony stupid?
Well, yeah, the problem is going to be the figuring out the extent of the law and who's going to make that decision on how stupid is felony and where the line between
This one,
infraction, misdemeanor, and
they're
felony.
reading this as an accidental shooting, so it's not a crime.
Well, this was an
Yeah.
intentional shooting. It was
But
not.
it-
He didn't
it's
intend
an
to-
accidental hitting of
Accidental,
somebody,
yes.
Yeah.
but an
Shot the
intentional
ground,
shooting.
Yes.
And heaven forbid if he was in a second floor apartment
Well,
Right.
yeah, that would, then he'd
or
be
an
in jail.
upstairs of a house. Because folks,
Right.
if you don't know already, bullets do some weird things, and
They
if you
do.
think you're just going to shoot it in the floor and it's
Yeah.
going to stay there, you're really wrong.
But I'm gonna advocate this guy should have some jail time over
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
And
Oh, yeah.
even though it's an
Reckless.
accident, the hitting the kid was an accident,
Mm,
but it was so stupid to fire at the floor right in front of him,
right.
that he should go to jail for that.
Well,
It
Yeah, I
shouldn't
mean,
be
does that
ruled
make a
as
good
an
role model?
accidental
No,
shooting.
this was almost like an involuntary manslaughter. If you
This is, if he
fired
killed
a gun,
him,
Yeah.
fired a gun, if you'd killed him, it would have been involuntary manslaughter. And
Yes.
at this point, I think obviously that it's going to depend on the parish prosecutor there in New Orleans if he's going to prosecute this guy or not.
and they have lots of gun crime in New Orleans, so maybe this will, anyway, I'd like to see what happens.
I'm
You see
sure.
something like this every once in a while, where somebody
Yeah.
just does something, you look at that was incredibly stupid, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Because it's technically an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All three of us, I'm sure, have actually witnessed a lot of dumb things people do with guns. You and I testified in a case where
Yeah.
we had someone who was ignorant
Who
on how to
was
use guns.
felony stupid.
Yeah. And
The
it
guy
should,
went
they
to
should
trial
be
and
just
got off, actually.
it should be
'cause
mandated to
we were
take
brilliant.
we were awesome, weren't we? And so, I think it should be mandated that they at least take some training if they show that they are that ignorant, or maybe their common sense, is generally not so common with these people. Just saying.
Well, maybe not put him in
Yeah.
jail, but require him to go to the
Yeah,
training
yeah.
because he already did this. That's
Right.
probably a better solution.
There you go. Maybe.
40 hours of firearms training and
Exactly.
cleaning up.
40 hours of hunter safety.
40, oh yeah, hunter safety was like,
9 minutes. Action News 4, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 11/4. Uniontown local police say a home invasion happened at 1:30 a.m. in the 100 block of Lenox Street. This is old guy's night.
another
82-year-old resident was awakened by sounds of a burglary. Lieutenant Tom Kolenzik, thank you,
Mhm.
of Uniontown Police Department said the intruder was wearing a skeleton mask and gloves. He came in, demanded money. The resident told him he didn't have any money, the 82-year-old resident.
Mm.
The two engaged in a physical confrontation. It was more of a pushing and shoving match. The elderly victim reached for a gun he kept on his nightstand for 30 years. The victim fired it for the first time ever, and the intruder fled out the back door of the house. Responding officers found the would-be home invader collapsed in the backyard of the house. He was pronounced dead at the scene.
Wow.
Police did not disclose the name of the homeowner. They identified the intruder as a 46-year-old from West Virginia. Police commented there is no greater example of self-defense than this elderly man protecting himself at 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Defensive shootings don't get much better than this one,
No.
folks.
That was a good one.
Keeping the firearm ready is how you keep yourself alive. This is another one of these cases. The guy's in the house. This guy is 82 years old. Yelling for help, calling 911 are worthless when the guy's already there.
Mhm.
And
You're your own first responder.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
the guy
normally
responded.
we'd jump in and say you need to practice with your firearm and yet this guy
Yeah.
had never fired the gun and he'd had it
Yeah.
for 30 years. Apparently practice isn't necessary for everybody.
Well, it does say Lieutenant Tom Kolenzik, and the 82-year-old gentleman probably had military background.
Possibly,
You
yeah.
know, you never know.
I would highly recommend
From the
folks-
Civil War, though.
Well,
You
yeah.
know, hey,
Well, hey, the guy before was 88. Come on.
he's
you know.
keeping it on the nightstand,
Here's the thing I would say, folks. This was a great shooting, obviously. Absolutely perfect self-defense. But if you're going to have a gun and you buy a gun, if you're not trained with it, get some training. If you are trained with it, take it out and shoot it before you have to rely your life on it. What would have
Right.
happened had this guy, he had this gun for 30 years and never shot it? Think about that. If there was a manufacturer's defect in that gun, that's why law enforcement officers always shoot their weapons. I have a personal thing that I don't shoot anything less than 500 rounds of ammunition through any pistol or rifle that I'm going to rely my life on before I start carrying it. End of story.
Most
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, you want to make sure you understand that shooting is a perishable skill. If you don't use it, you lose it. Getting proper training, intuitive training for defense training is really important. This gentleman, he got lucky. I'm just going to say he got lucky.
Practice, unless
Practice,
you're this guy.
Well, he still needs to practice though.
I mean, I'm shocked at this because this is the first time
Yeah.
I've read this. I mean, this guy had this gun for 30 years.
Oh yeah, I added this after
no,
I sent
maybe
the
he's
outline.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just like,
I just had to get this one.
Yeah.
Just too cool.
He may be just bragging. I don't know. Maybe he does practice.
well, I mean, I'm just amazed and thank God that he didn't have, the gun, 30 years ago
Gun
wasn't
worked.
a crappy gun,
Right. I mean, if that brass has been in there, it could develop patina and
Oh, my
corrosion
God.
of the gun. And,
Yeah.
there's probably
We have all, and we've all seen people who have, Bob and I for sure, Maggie, years ago, we've seen guys unload their revolvers, and I've seen stuff that was
Oh, yeah.
literally green. with
I have
corrosion.
too.
Oh yeah.
I
mean,
have
years
too.
ago,
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember because Red Fox came in and he wanted us to look at his gun, and he pulls this North American Arms revolver, little mini Derringer, out of his pocket that is absolutely crudted with green and everything, and he had been carrying around in his pants pocket with no holster for
gosh.
years, and it wouldn't fire. I mean, it was so
Oh, yeah.
gummed up with crap because he didn't put it in a holster.
Hey, I had a
but,
student who actually showed up who had a homemade cork, like the corks that you use for the little ships that you build in a bottle. He took one of those corks and stuck it in the end of his gun because he used to carry it in his pocket. This guy showed up with that revolver, and it had the green patina and the brass and the corrosion of the metal, and so it's just like, come on, you got to take a class. And
Here we go.
know how to
We're
take care of
gonna
your guns.
run out of time here.
Okay, go.
I gotta mention, I promised the Henderson Friends of NRA. This Saturday, they're having their dinner at the Fiesta Henderson Hotel and Casino on Lake Mead in Henderson. If you would like to go to that, support the NRA, hope you have a pencil. You can play this show back on YouTube anyway and get it. It's 702-617-9218 or email friends of the NRA at the guy's name, SAUTERASSOC.com.
That's a great event.
702-617-9218 to get tickets for it. And you can go there. Upcoming gun shows, Las Vegas Gun Show up the street from us here at Sunset and Las Vegas Boulevard at the Sports Center. 2 weeks, November 19th and 20th, Saturday and Sunday. We've got a new gun show coming in town. They called the Great Las Vegas Gun Show. It's a company from Midwest that runs gun shows all over. This is their first time in Las Vegas. They're going to be at Cashman November 26 and 27. Both of these shows, we will be there for at least a while to answer questions. We'll be back next week from 5 to 6 right here on KSHP Radio and on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We'll have murder defense specialist attorney Clark Patrick. I'm going to hit him for the legalese on this stuff we're talking about with the question 1. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. And again, questions and comments to Bob at firedupmail.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Oh, wait, one more. The Lady Republican Women of Las Vegas monthly meeting at Maggio's in the Fashion Show Mall on November 16. Maggio's, there's a lunch there. It's great. Blah, 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 blah. It's $25, and the guest speaker is going to be Bob Irwin from Fired Up.
Yes.
And you can ask questions and listen to me and get a wonderful meal for $25, and it supports Lady
I heard
Republicans.
that guy's kind of
Maggiano's.
sketchy.
And
I
it's
heard
a-
that guy's kind of sketchy though as a speaker.
I don't know.
Yeah, should I get a gun for the house? Here we go. Yes, you should. Don't even have to pay $25. Yes,
Yes.
have a gun, learn how to work it. Maggiano's. and-
Maggiano's. Maggiano's is actually
Maggiano's.
across the street from the Wynn, just so you know, in the Big Fashion Show Mall.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Wonderful
an
food.
amazing place. We go there every year for Thanksgiving.
Are you going to this?
I'm
You're a
going to that.
Republican
Yes.
woman. Yes.
Yes, I'll actually be at this as well.
Oh, see? So you can see Maggie too. And I'll make her do the speech.
No.
November 16th. You can call 702-460-1471 to get tickets, or just show up. They'll let you in.
11 to noon.
Or call Maggie and she'll tell you where to go to get there. It is now, it says on my newly reset clock. We're right at the end of the show. I got one more great story. I'll go on to next week's. Thanks for watching. We will be back in 1 week with Clark Patrick and a lawyer's view of what's happening with question 1. Thanks for watching.